The sheer scale of the Han's ambition is breathtaking. Compulsory education launched practically overnight, complete with ingenious rapid teacher training. It's nation-building at hyperspeed. Then, You Fu's dramatic river encounter pulls us into a whole new dynamic. Rescuing those You Jiang tribesmen wasn't just a chance event. Its first contact with a society boasting unique skills like millet farming and beekeeping, a stark contrast to Han industrial planning. What really struck me was the You Jiang chief's cunning plan, not just trading goods, but scheming to acquire, and people via marriage exchange to absorb their knowledge. It's brilliantly pragmatic, yet feels dangerously naive given the Han's true power and expansionist drive. They see shiny tools and useful skills, but perhaps not the underlying force. They're inviting in. This planned exchange feels less like diplomacy and more like the prelude to a major cultural collision, potentially devastating for the You Jiang. The next day dawned faintly. The autumn heat was still fierce, the sun impatiently climbing into the sky by 5 o'clock. Xuan, Yang, and the others were up early too, heading straight for the beehives with earthenware jars. They carefully scraped jar after jar of honey, not even sparing the honeycomb. That was natural chewing gum, sweet, and fun to chew. Additionally, Xuan had specifically instructed someone to fill a small jar, halfway with gleaming yellow millet. This was their most prized possession, something they intended to trade with the Han tribe for some good items. Once everything was ready, Yang gave a grand wave of his hand, and the group set off, full of purpose and vigor, towards the Han tribe's landing spot. At that moment in the woods by the riverbank, You Fu was leading his men, hacking away at trees with grunts and groans. He figured this place was wide open. They needed to set up a post as a landmark, otherwise, who knew if they could find their way back next time. Since they had nothing better to do, everyone pitched in. It was just one tree. They'd have it done in minutes. A little over an hour later, a smooth stripped log was ready. They dug a hole by the river, planted the post, and finally tied a piece of white cloth to it. Voila, a simple flagpole. Quite eye-catching. It was still early, so You Fu directed everyone to gather dry firewood. Bringing wood on the boat takes up space, but charcoal is different. It's light, burns hot. The little stove on the boat relies on it. Indeed, this was their secret to handling 3 meals a day plus boiling water while on board. It wasn't until noon, after they had finished their dry rations, that Xuan, Yang, and their group finally arrived, somewhat late, before they even reached the riverbank. They spotted a group of strangely dressed Han tribe men in the woods, picking up branches. The You Jiang people stared, dumbfounded. Yumong hadn't expected them to have actually come ashore, while the others were simply dazzled by their attire. Every single person wore clothes made of that smooth, slippery material. Their hair was all neatly combed, and they held unfamiliar tools. But you picking up branches? It seemed even powerful tribes needed fire for cooking. In that respect, they weren't so different from their own tribe. As they stood there gawking, about to offer a greeting, someone from the Han tribe spoke. "First, our captain is over there. We're just gathering some firewood. Come on, I'll take you to him." The man deftly tied up his bundle of branches with rope, slipped a long stick through the middle, hoisted it onto his shoulder, and started walking, turning back to beckon them to follow. Xuan and Yang exchanged glances, a silent communication, passing between them. Looks like they really were just gathering firewood, not here to cause trouble. A great weight lifted from their hearts. They had genuinely feared these newcomers might be here to seize territory. Following the man out of the woods and down to the riverbank, Xuan was stunned yet again. Good heavens. The river Tan was swarming with at least 200 men, all uniformly dressed. No need to ask. This was clearly the main force of the Han tribe. What intrigued him more, however, were several round earthen mounds that had appeared by the river. Some were sealed tight, while others had openings puffing out smoke and flames. Were they making elixirs, or up to something else entirely? "Captain, the group from yesterday is here," the guide yelled out as soon as they arrived. You Fu put down the charcoal pencil he was holding, silently grumbling about the leader insisting he write some damned sailing log every day, and immediately put on a standard diplomatic smile, rising to greet his guests. "Welcome, welcome, I knew you'd come back. Quick, sit over here. Someone, bring tea." Yu Fu swiftly swept the paper and pencil on the small table aside, warmly inviting Xuan, Yang, and the others. Yang's jaw nearly hit the ground. Yesterday, this place had been nothing but a desolate riverbank. Today, it was utterly transformed. Tents were lined up as if for inspection. A canopy with a hemp roof stood in the middle, providing shade. Mats were spread beneath it, and in the center of the mats sat a low, long table surrounded by several woven cushions. Yu Fu had been sitting there, writing and drawing, just moments ago. It had only been a day. They had already built houses. They looked even more substantial than the best structures in their own tribe. Give them a few more days. Wouldn't this place turn into a small city? "Sit, please sit, just like this," Yu Fu said, pointing to the cushions and demonstrating himself. Yu Ji, who had participated in the rescue yesterday, also greeted Yang warmly and plopped down beside the table. Seeing a familiar face, Yang's nervousness eased considerably. He gave his own leader a look, and the group followed suit, settling onto the cushions. Yang spoke first. "This is our tribe's leader, Xuan. This is a gift we brought for you. Please accept it." As he spoke, he carefully placed an earthenware jar filled with honey onto the table, afraid he might collapse the delicate little thing. "Did you like the things we sent yesterday? If you did, we can trade for something else," Yu Fu chimed in, accepting the jar. Just then, the tea arrived. Each person received an exquisite 3-piece ceramic teacup set, complete with a saucer, bowl, and lid. Curiosity piqued, Xuan lifted the lid to peek inside. A few wilted-looking black leaves floated. In reddish hot water, steam rising. The appearance wasn't exactly appealing, but he thought, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Maybe they actually enjoyed this leaf soup. He felt a little embarrassed. Just last night he had used one of these small bowls Yu Fu had given them to drink meat stew, complaining as he drank. The bowl looked nice, but it was too small, didn't hold much, and burned his hand. Only now did he realize you were supposed to use the whole set. Holding the saucer prevented burning, and besides, these clearly weren't meant for drinking stew. His face felt a little hot. Yu Fu picked up his teacup, took an elegant sip, set it down, and smiled. "Thank you for your gift. What would you like to trade for this time? If yesterday's items weren't to your liking, we have many other fine things." Xuan mimicked the action, taking a sip only to hiss, "Sss." It was scalding hot. His tongue burned, and it tasted incredibly bitter. What was so good about boiled leaves? However, that sip reinforced the idea he'd had last night. This Han tribe was skilled at making things, but they must be short on food. Look, they were reduced to drinking leaf soup. If he offered his millet, how could he fail to hook their skilled people? With this thought, Xuan's confidence grew. "We liked your things very much. But we don't have much to trade, only this honey." Xuan gestured as he spoke, pushing the honey jar towards Yu Fu. "We don't have much of this honey either." Afraid Yu Fu might look down on it, he quickly played his trump card. "But we can teach you a good way to get food. I guarantee everyone in your tribe will eat their fill, and you'll never have to drink this unsatisfying leaf soup again." As Xuan spoke, he set the teacup lid aside, pointed at the tea leaves floating in the bowl, patted his own stomach, gestured to the people around them, and finally, like a magician, produced the jar of gleaming yellow millet. Immediately he began gesturing wildly, spitting slightly as he passionately extolled how miraculous, delicious and nourishing their millet was. However, the moment the millet appeared, Xuan noticed Yu Fu's eyes instantly light up. When looking at the honey, Yu Fu had merely offered a polite smile, nothing like now. His eyes were practically glued to the millet. Could it be? This fellow knew what it was? Did he recognize millet? Of course, Yu Fu didn't recognize millet itself, but after years of eating various grains in the Han tribe, He had an excellent sense of what constituted food. He could tell almost instantly whether something was an edible seed or just grass. So these little yellow grains before him were plump and full. Although different from any grain he had ever seen, they were definitely proper food. If he had to compare them to something, they slightly resembled the sorghum the tribe had recently acquired, just smaller and a different color. Moreover, judging by Xuan's excited gestures, they had been cultivating this stuff for a long time, had mastered the technique, and wanted to trade this knowledge. Ha! Talk about a lucky break. Yu Fu was overjoyed. What was their mission out here? To scout routes and find resources. Grain was one of the most crucial resources, and land suitable for growing grain was even more valuable. Trade for this? Yu Fu's voice held a note of urgency. What is this called? This was a new type of grain. Whether it tasted good or had a high yield didn't matter. Bringing it back was a major accomplishment. As for how to grow it well, that was the leader's problem to worry about. The old man was resourceful, he'd surely figure something out. Yes, trade for this. It's called millet. It tastes great, and it's easy to grow. As long as you learn to plant this, I guarantee. Never mind that. Yu Fu cut Xuan's sales pitch short abruptly. Millet, right? Where are the seeds? What do we need to pay attention to when planting? You tell me this and I'll give you another batch of gifts. Xuan was completely baffled. This wasn't how the script went. According to his plan, wasn't he supposed to painstakingly emphasize the importance of growing grain, after which the other party would have a sudden realization and gratefully beg him to teach them? Then he would reservedly propose conditions like leaving some people behind or trading technology, and they would agree with immense gratitude. Why was this guy stealing the scene? He hadn't even finished the emotions and lines he'd been building. Up where was his protagonist halo? However, Xuan's mind worked quickly. Yu Fu's eagerness clearly showed his desperate desire for millet, and he was asking how to plant it, wanting unhulled seeds. This meant they knew something about it. Maybe they'd seen another tribe growing it somewhere, but hadn't managed to get seeds or the technique. Yes, that must be it. No wonder he was so excited. Xuan, Yang, and the others began furiously concocting theories, forcing a reasonable explanation onto Yu Fu's unusual reaction. So, do you have seeds? When can we get them? Seeing the group, staring blankly at him without speaking, Yu Fu grew a bit anxious and asked again. Yes, the seeds are at our settlement. Xuan snapped back to reality. I can teach you how to grow this millet, but the fields are all over there. If you want to learn, you have to come back to our settlement with us. He glanced at the gear, 200 or so Han men around them, and quickly added, just a few people need to go. You can bring a few men back with us. We'll teach you how to plant it and give you seeds then. He muttered inwardly, please don't let all 200 of them come. We don't have enough stored grain to host them. Of course, if he could convince these skilled people to stay, they could tighten their belts this year, plant more grain next year, and manage. Great, when do we leave? We can set off right now. Yu Fu shot to his feet decisively. Huh? So soon? Now it was the You Jiang group's turn to be stunned. They hadn't expected Yu Fu to be so keen on farming. Still, the more importance he placed on it, the happier Xuan felt, sensing a greater chance of convincing some people to stay. No time like the present, he also stood up. Since you're in such a hurry, let's leave right now. If we walk fast, maybe we can reach our settlement before dark. With both leaders standing, everyone else scrambled to their feet. They decided to leave immediately. The You Jiang people hadn't brought much anyway, and generously left the jars of honey behind. Yu Fu selected Yu Ji plus 6 capable attendants, making a total of 8 people. They quickly packed their bags, taking 10 days' worth of rations, a small iron pot, eating utensils, and other necessities. Yu Ji carefully packed away Yu Fu's precious paper and pencil. Each man wore a knife at his waist and carried an entrenching tool. 2 also carried long spears. They were fully equipped, and just like that, the group followed Xuan and Yang, setting off in a grand procession. Just past 2 in the afternoon, Xuan and Yang led your people, Yu Fu and his group, in a mighty procession towards the ancestral lands of the You Jiang tribe. They passed through the woods and emerged onto an open plain. Xuan occasionally looked up at the scorching sun, then mysteriously pulled out a flat, round stone disc. The disc was carved with symbols that looked like scribbles, and it had a small round hole in the center. He picked up a small twig and inserted it into the hole. The twig's shadow immediately slanted towards one of the symbols. Xuan adjusted it against the sun for a good while, and only then, seemingly confirming the direction, waved his hand grandly. "Go this way." Your man, Yu Fu, watched from the side, clicking his tongue in amazement. "Hey, this thing. Wasn't it just a miniature version of that sundial you asked the shaman of the rat to study back then? How strange. Wasn't this used for telling time? Could it actually be used for navigation? Chief Xuan, what treasure is this, Yu Fu?" Ever the curious child leaned in and asked. "Oh, this." Xuan immediately puffed out his chest, his face radiating the pride of, "Our tribe also has high technology. Without this, it's easy to get lost far from home. By looking at the sun's shadow with it, we can find our way back home. Perfectly. No matter how far we go, we can always find our way back." Although Xuan spoke with great enthusiasm, many of his words were confusing to Yu Fu. But he finally understood that this was indeed a tool for determining direction. However, Yuan quickly started wondering about something else. Where was the old home of these Han tribe people? "Yu Fu, where is your tribe? Is it far from here? You've traveled such a long distance. How do you find your way?" he asked, and without waiting for an answer, slapped his thigh in sudden realization. "Oh, I know. You must be following the big river, so you don't have to worry about direction at all. When you want to go back, you just follow the river upstream. Ha 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 ha. Don't worry. When you return, I'll have Yang escort you to the riverbank." His thought process was certainly quite unique. "Our tribe is called Han, and it's very, very far from here," Yu Fu said with a smile, correcting him. "You're right. We don't need to worry about getting lost by following the river. But our Han tribe also has its own divine tool for recognizing direction." As he spoke, he took out a flat, square wooden box about the size of a palm from the leather pouch hanging at his waist. The box was finely crafted, with brass hinges and clasps on both sides. It was clearly no ordinary item. Xuan's eyes immediately widened. The Han tribe people always produced such incredibly exquisite things. Although he had seen similar wooden boxes before, this one was even smaller and more delicate. It looked like a treasure at first glance, but he still couldn't figure out how this thing could determine direction. There must be something hidden inside, right? Indeed, Yu Fu clicked open the brass clasp with a snap and lifted the lid. The small wooden box split into two. The upper half was nothing special, but the lower half contained a small round disc embedded within it, similar to the stone disc in Xuan's hand. The material of this disc was unknown, shining with an alluring golden light. Its surface had several raised circles of symbols. The outermost circle had square symbols. The middle circle had lines radiating outwards, and some of these lines and symbols were silver-colored, sparkling brightly. This thing was far more advanced than his sun shadow stone, and there was no need to insert a small twig in the middle. There was just a diamond-shaped needle, resting quietly on top, occasionally trembling slightly. What treasure is this? How do you use it?" Xuan couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. He had originally thought his tribe's sun shadow stone was already cutting-edge technology among the surrounding tribes. Now, seeing Yu Fu take out something even more impressive, he immediately became restless, even feeling a bit ashamed. "This was invented by our leader. He named this thing a luopan," Yu Fu said. As he said this, he inwardly muttered, "Another thing named by you, Chief, and it even has your surname Luo in it. You're afraid people won't know it's your invention. Truly." Cough. "Luopan?" Xuan tried hard to imitate the unfamiliar Han. "Word. Yes," Yu Fu said, gently nudging the needle with his finger. The needle spun rapidly for a few turns and finally settled steadily in the direction it had originally pointed. Look at this needle. It can rotate, but it will always point in a fixed direction. We use this to determine direction. He tried turning the entire luopan, but no matter how the luopan turned, that needle remained motionless as if magic, and even after a slight wobble, it quickly returned to pointing in its original direction. Hey? It really does. It's amazing. Xuan's eyes almost popped out at this inexplicable phenomenon. How is this done? This thing must be a treasure from the heavens. This needle itself doesn't directly point to east, south, west, or north, Yu Fu explained, pointing to a thin silver line on the disc face. See this silver line? You have to align the needle with this silver line, and then look at the symbols marked on the luopan to confirm the direction. That's the most accurate way. Our leader calls this magnetic declination. He paused, then added, "This thing is a treasure, but it's not the only one of its kind. We have many in our tribe. Our fleet alone has 6. As for this one, every boat. Captain has 1, and there are 2 spares left for the scouting teams who go ashore. We made these ourselves in our tribe. We have as many as we need. They were all invented by our leader." Xuan was completely dumbfounded, his mind struggling to comprehend. The main thing he couldn't figure out was how the Han tribe managed to make such a miraculous thing and mass-produce it. What was its principle? Why did that needle always point in one direction when nothing was moving it? What kind of divine creation was this? Then why does this thing always point over there? Yang, standing nearby, couldn't help but ask curiously. Xuan immediately pricked up his ears, staring intently at Yu Fu, waiting for his explanation. He desperately wanted to know the principle behind it. Was there some trick, or was it truly divine power? Well, Yu Fu scratched his head, a little troubled. I can't explain it clearly to you because I don't understand it very well myself. I just know how to use it. Our leader said it's made using magnetism. He said the land beneath our feet possesses a force that we can't see, and it always moves. A fixed direction. The iron needle on this is affected by this magnetic force and can point in the same direction as the magnetic force. He tried hard to repeat that mysterious theory your leader had explained earlier. In reality, he himself only half understood it, mainly because that force was invisible and intangible. I can't explain it clearly. It's very hard to understand, mainly because we can't see that force. But our leader just says it exists. He also said that many birds flying in the sky rely on this to confirm their direction. Science was indeed beyond the scope for primitive people. It required a bit of imagination. Unfortunately, Yu Fu was clearly not a very imaginative person. In short, Yu Fu concluded, our leader said this isn't divine power, but a force that everyone can grasp. It just requires the help of some tools to utilize it. Xuan and Yang were utterly confused, half understanding, half not. But they grasped the key information. This thing was not divine power, but a magical force that could be used with tools, even though people couldn't see it. So Xuan asked again, "Then what tools has your tribe made using it? Are they useful?" "None, just this luopan for now," Yu Fu answered honestly. "Our leader said that using that force requires many other things that our Han tribe cannot do at the moment, but perhaps later we can. He also took the opportunity to flatter you slightly. But our leader is very capable. He has created many good things. Since he said it's possible, then I believe him. He is a man of his word. He has never lied about things he said he could achieve." The faces of the You Jiang people showed a hint of disappointment, but also perhaps some relief. It seemed the Han tribe didn't know everything after all. There were still things they couldn't make. But these words also directly confirmed their guess. The Han tribe was indeed extremely skilled at manufacturing. This further strengthened Xuan's determination to keep a few Han tribe members. These were living libraries of technology. Poach them. They absolutely must be poached. And so the group continued towards the You Jiang tribe, chatting about the novel tools. However, because they spent a considerable amount of time talking on the way, it was completely dark by the time they arrived. They hadn't made it back to the tribe before nightfall. Fortunately, they weren't far from the tribe now. There was no need to spend the night outside. It would take at most another half-hour to reach home. So Xuan suggested continuing the journey so they could have a hot meal back at the tribe. The night on the wilderness was pitch black. Thankfully, it was a clear day, and there was a moon and stars in the sky, so it wasn't completely dark. However, for illumination, and to prevent potential attacks from wild beasts, the group stopped and quickly made several torches, grease, dry grass, wooden sticks. Their method of making fire was by striking flint. In this regard, the You Jiang and Han tribes weren't very different. The only difference was that you had equipped Yu Fu and his group with steel fire strikers, making their fire starting more efficient. Torches lit, the team continued forward. Yu Fu had originally thought that without the sun, Xuan's sun shadow stone would be completely useless, and with greatly reduced visibility at night, they would surely get lost and have to rely on his luopan for help. However, the result greatly exceeded his expectations. Xuan and Yang showed no intention of asking him for help. They just occasionally looked up at the starry night sky, then confidently led the team forward without hesitation, constantly murmuring, "Go this way, that's right. Not far now, we'll be there soon." Now it was Yu Fu's turn to be surprised. How were they determining direction at night? As soon as the question arose, he voiced it. "By looking at the stars," Xuan replied as a matter of course, pointing towards the northeast sky. "The moon and stars can both guide direction. Just like that star, look at that one. That star never moves. It appears there every single night." Yu Fu squinted hard in the direction he pointed for a long time. The night sky was dense with sparkling stars. Heaven knew which one he was talking about. However, Yu Fu still felt a sense of admiration for people who could read the celestial signs. This required immense patience, just like the shaman of the rat in their tribe, who watched the moon every day, watched the moon his whole life. Wasn't that just crazy? The moon was one thing, at least there were a limited number. This stargazer was even more abnormal. With so many stars, how did they differentiate them? And how did they remember the position of a specific one? He wasn't interested in this sort of thing, nor did he bother to delve deeper. In his opinion, performing such repetitive and tedious observation tasks every day was sheer torment. And Yu Fu, precisely, was not someone who could stay still and be content. He was born restless. He loved to wander everywhere, to go to more places, to see a broader world, to be a man like the wind. Speaking of which, he was actually very grateful to you for giving him such an opportunity. Without the entanglements of tribal trivialities, without having to worry about the domestic affairs of his clansmen, he could safely leave his wife and children in the tribe. You didn't require him to worry about material supplies and equipped him with the best transportation. It used to be horse carts, and now it was even faster sailing ships. With this support, he had indeed seen distant places he could never have reached in his previous life, and witnessed countless new and strange sights. The group stumbled forward in the dark, lighting their way with torches, walking for another half-hour. Ahead finally appeared a blaze of lights. A massive settlement suddenly appeared before their eyes. Many families in the tribe were still cooking, smoke curled upwards everywhere, points of fire dotted the landscape, and the air was filled with noisy human voices. The scene was quite spectacular. Yu Fu and his group were stunned. Goodness gracious, they had indeed guessed this You Jiang tribe was a large one, but they had never imagined it would be this big. Judging by the twinkling points of light, the houses were spread out, covering a wide area. It was at least the size of a large village, with a population of at least over 1,000. Of course, because it was night, the view wasn't clear, and Yu Fu still misjudged. The population here was far more than 1,000. Ah, finally back home. Ha ha ha. As soon as he stepped onto his own territory, Xuan's spirits immediately lifted. Here he was the absolute host. "We've arrived just as they're cooking. You're in for a treat. Come, sit here and have some water and rest first. I'll have someone make you some geng so you can taste our millet." He absolutely had to. entertain these distinguished guests well, so they could fully experience the prosperity and strength of the You Jiang tribe. Only then would he have a chance to retain their talented people. All right, thank you for the trouble. As soon as Yu Fu heard they would have that new grain to eat, his eyes immediately lit up, and he naturally stopped being polite. The main, reason he agreed to come along was to find out everything about millet. Now that he had the opportunity to taste food made with millet himself, how could he refuse? We also brought our own food. Tomorrow, we invite you to taste some specialties from our Han tribe. After Yu Fu and his group were seated around a large tree stump to rest, Xuan immediately pulled Yang aside slyly and whispered instructions. Hey, Yang, I remember your sister is also of age, right? Have her come and cook for the Han tribe people. I think Yuji, who saved you, seems pretty good. He's young, strong, owes you a life debt, and appears to have a good relationship with their leader. He must know quite a bit. Go make arrangements. You must find a way to keep that Yuji here. Preferably win him over. My sister? She... Yang's face immediately showed confusion and resistance. What's wrong? You disagree? Xuan's eyes immediately widened and he began to pressure and entice. Didn't that Yuji save you? And he's the youngest among them. Looks like he just came of age not long ago, is strong and not bad looking. What, you don't think he's good? Enough. Your sister marrying him wouldn't be a loss at all. If you don't agree, I'll arrange for another girl to go. Don't say I didn't look out for you then. No, I didn't say I disagree. Yang was overwhelmed by Xuan's barrage. After thinking about it, a life debt, the other party's conditions seemed decent, and most importantly, Xuan's attitude was very firm. Finally, he reluctantly agreed. It's just, I don't know if they can really be persuaded to stay. All right, I'll go ask my sister what she thinks. He felt incredibly conflicted. Nothing was decided yet. Okay, that's more like it. Xuan patted Yang's shoulder with satisfaction. His objective achieved, he returned happily to the tree stump, continuing to chat enthusiastically with Yu Fu and the others, waiting for dinner to be served. After a while, a young girl came over carrying an earthenware pot with 3 legs and began serving geng to the group. Your Han tribe people stretched their necks to look and immediately chuckled. This so-called geng was just the meat porridge they often ate. However, while the Han tribe usually used rice to cook porridge, this porridge made with millet was indeed the first time they had seen it. It smelled quite fragrant, though. The millet and meat porridge was simmered until thick, soft, and fragrant, garnished with a sprinkle of wild greens, looking quite appealing. However, one mouthful. The You Jiang people slurped it down noisily, faces blissful, as if it were the finest delicacy on earth. But for your Han tribe warriors, whose palates had been spoiled by refined salt, the harsh saltiness and strange aftertaste characteristic of crude salt were simply an assault on their taste buds. How is it? Our tribe's porridge tasty, right? Xuan, enjoying his own bowl, didn't forget to enthusiastically urge them on. If you like it, eat more. There's still plenty in the pot. Yes, delicious. Yu Fu managed a smile, but inwardly, he was wailing. One spoonful of salt ruins everything. What could he say? He was desperate too. After forcing down a bowl of the strangely flavored thick soup, Xuan eagerly offered another. Yu Fu quickly waved his hand, firmly refusing, citing the excuse that spending too long on the boat has shrunk my appetite. I'm not used to eating so much. Xuan urged him a couple more times, but seeing they genuinely wouldn't eat more, he let it go. Whether the guests ate or not was their business, but he, as the host, had to maintain an appearance of generosity. If he seemed stingy now, how could he possibly persuade people to stay later? Who would follow someone they couldn't even get a full meal with? After the meal, the sky turned completely dark. The You Jiang had little in the way of lighting equipment, and there wasn't much entertainment in those times either. Apart from the men needed for night watch patrols, everyone else basically crawled into their huts to sleep. Xuan had initially been pondering how to arrange for his sister to exchange feelings with Yuji, but seeing that the Han tribe men were all squeezed together to sleep, and having only just met, unable to make out faces clearly in the pitch dark, the matter couldn't be rushed. He had to put it aside for now. In the dead of night, the entire You Jiang settlement fell silent, leaving only the rustling sound of wind sweeping through the millet fields, rising and falling like ocean waves. There were also the faint footsteps of patrol members carrying spears, and the occasional crackle of burning torches. This You Jiang settlement resembled a village, with houses scattered about, but lacking any proper surrounding wall, which explained the need for night patrols. The next day, just as dawn was breaking, both the You Jiang tribespeople and Yu Fu's group were up early. Without clocks, everyone's rhythm of life followed the sun. Work at sunrise, rest at sunset, as primitive as could be. While children still slept soundly in the stilt houses, the men had already shouldered simple hoes made of stone and wood and gone down to the fields to weed. The women, hefting heavy wooden pestles, began the laborious task of pounding millet with loud thump-thump-thumps. They had to pound out the entire family's millet supply for the day, meaning hulling it in the morning. Watching this scene, your men shook their heads inwardly. The Han tribe had long since switched to efficient, labor-saving treadle hammers. Who still pounded grain by hand like this? It was utterly exhausting. However, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump echoing through the settlement gave the Han tribe men a strange sense of familiarity. In the Han tribe, similar sounds could be heard during harvest season, but that was centralized processing, hulling, all the grain at once, unlike here, where they pounded day after day. After pounding the millet, the women started fires to cook breakfast, the same millet porridge as always. When the men returned from the fields, they would wake the children to eat together, day after day, year after year. Xuan also rose early, enthusiastically offering to make breakfast for Yu Fu and his group, but Yu Fu quickly declined politely. Thanks, but no thanks. He really didn't want to taste that uniquely flavored salty water meat porridge again. Chief, Xuan, please don't trouble yourself. We brought our own food. Let us cook today. You should join us and try our Han tribe's porridge. Ah? Xuan froze, momentarily failing to process what was happening. We also have grain similar to millet. Let's eat ours for this meal, Yu Fu repeated patiently. Now Xuan was completely dumbstruck. This wasn't right. The script wasn't supposed to go like this. This was miles away from what he had envisioned. The Han tribe actually had grain too? Didn't that mean they also knew how to farm? Then what advantage did he have left to attract them to stay? Your Han tribe also grows millet, so grows. Yong, who was nearby helping his sister pound millet, couldn't help but interject. His sister also stopped her work, staring wide-eyed in surprise. This was the first time the You Jiang people had heard that another tribe besides them possessed the core knowledge of growing grain. Not millet. Yu Ji, who had already started preparing their equipment, casually grabbed a handful of snow-white grains and walked over. Ours is Dao. Look, this is it. Xuan, Yong, and his sister instantly gathered around, curiously staring at the grains in Yu Ji's palm, their eyes wide. This is Dao. Such big grains, much bigger than our millet. So white. The three exclaimed in unison. That's right, this is Dao, Yu Fu added from the side. We call the hulled Dao Dami to distinguish it from other grains. Let's eat our food today. Try our tribe's Dami, Yu Ji said, tossing the rice in his hand into a porcelain basin they had brought, starting to look for water to wash it. You don't need to bother. Pounding millet like that is too tiring. Our Han tribe never uses such clumsy methods. Yong, could you trouble yourself to get some firewood? Oh, I'll go right away, Yong responded instinctively, quickly running off to fetch firewood. His sister also came to her senses, put away the half-pounded millet, went back into her hut to get a simple carrying pole made of wood, and balancing a flat-bottomed earthenware pot with ears on each end, ambled off towards the river to fetch water. It seemed getting water was also quite an effort for the You Jiang. The Han tribe. Men watched all this silently, only two words floating in their minds: backward. After a short while, Yong's sister returned carrying 2 pots of water. The water, was quite murky, clearly just scooped from the riverbank, the mud and sand not yet settled. Yu Fu and his men made a silent comparison. The Han tribe relied almost entirely on wells for drinking water, which was clean groundwater. Moreover, every household had large water jars. They'd fill them and let the water sit for a few days before using it, allowing sediment to settle until the water was crystal clear, far superior to this river water. Yang's sister put down the pots barefoot in simple straw sandals and began washing the rice with Yuji. Chief Xuan, Yu Fu and Xuan, as leaders of their respective groups, naturally didn't need to do manual labor and sat chatting idly. Cooking with water like this isn't very clean, is it? There's mud and sand in it. Drinking it isn't good for the body, and it can easily taste strange. Xuan was still reeling from the shock of the Han tribe also has grain, his mind somewhat stalled. The trade farming techniques for talent script he had carefully crafted yesterday had been mercilessly torn apart by this handful of rice. He was wondering what to do next when Yu Fu's words jolted him back to reality. The water's not good? No, our ancestors have always drunk this water. No, what I mean is, Yu Fu struggled for descriptive words. This water, it has dirt. In it, it's not clear, it's very murky. However, Xuan still looked blank, clearly not understanding what these adjectives meant. Yu Fu had no choice but to rephrase the question. Then how does your Han tribe get drinking water? We drink well water, Yu Fu explained, gesturing as he spoke. It means digging a very deep pit in the ground, digging until water comes out. That water is very clean. We draw the water up and pour it into large water jars, letting it sit for a few days before using it, which makes it even cleaner. Well, deep pit? Water jar? Xuan still looked puzzled. These terms were completely foreign to him. Yes, dig deep pits in the ground, and there will be clean water inside. You can dig out water like that? Yang, who had just returned with the firewood, also came closer, his face etched with disbelief. Yes, you can, Yu Fu affirmed with a nod. As long as you dig deep enough. Xuan and Yang looked at each other, both lost in thought. They still didn't quite believe Yu Fu's description of a well, mainly because they had never seen one. Besides, the You Jiang tribe lived right by the great river and had never lacked drinking water so naturally they hadn't thought about finding more convenient ways to get it. For them, the challenge to research was how to make better pots for carrying water, not considering getting water from a different source. It was a classic case of fixed thinking. So how exactly do you farm this land? Does each person have to tend such a large area? Having grasped the pitiful yield of the millet, Yu Fu became curious about their labor intensity. In our tribe, everyone works together. The land isn't divided among individuals. The harvested grain is pooled together for everyone to eat. Xuan's face held a touch of pride. Of course, if you want to eat, you have to work. Lazy bones don't get food. But the men of our You Jiang tribe, every one of them is excellent, hard-working. That sounds good. Could you let me see how you manage this land? You did promise to teach us earlier, Yu Fu pressed, seizing the opportunity. Absolutely no problem. But let's fill our stomachs first. After eating, I'll take you to see right away, Xuan suggested. Deal. The two turned and walked back. The men weeding in the fields had also finished their work and were heading home for the meal. The sleepy children were roused by their parents, and the settlement instantly became lively again. Back at the same spot, Xuan, Yang, his sister, and Yu Fu's group of 8 from the Han tribe each held a bowl of white rice porridge. The porridge was mixed with some salty, shredded dried meat. Yu Chi, as if by magic, produced a small bowl and poured out some home-pickled vegetables. This stuff was a Han tribe specialty, a medley of chili peppers, dried radish, pickled mustard greens, peanuts, green beans, and soybeans, all pickled, together into a wonderfully fragrant mix. The ingredients were common roadside crops, grown by every household, affordable even for ordinary people. In the morning, if one was too lazy to stir-fry dishes, A few mouthfuls of pickles with plain porridge provided enough salt for a morning's work. The Han tribe members had long since grown accustomed to it, but for the You Jiang people, even the simplest combination of plain porridge and pickles was an astonishingly delicious delicacy. They ate without lifting their heads. My heavens, this stuff is too delicious. Yang slurped his porridge loudly while crunching on pickles, asking indistinctly, "What treasures did you put in here? How did you make it?" No treasures, just some dried vegetables and beans we grow ourselves," Yu Fu explained. "It's the same principle as growing grain. You shouldn't just focus on grain. If you see any tasty plants, you can try growing them yourselves." Xuan paused, suddenly looking up. Such delicious food, and using so much salt. It must be very expensive, right? Yu Fu chuckled. No, this stuff is considered the cheapest. In our place, every household can afford it. Breakfast is basically like this. Each family pickles their own, so the taste might vary slightly, but eating it every day is absolutely no problem. His tone shifted. "This is nothing. Being able to eat meat every meal, that's what you call living like immortals." Yang and his sister were completely stunned by these words, staring blankly at Yu Fu, even forgetting to eat. What? Such incredibly tasty pickles, something everyone could eat every day. How good must life be in the Han tribe? Xuan, however, deeply understood and nodded repeatedly. Wild vegetables. The You Jiang could gather some daily, but feeding over 2,000 tribe members meat every day was simply a pipe dream. Those small tribes with only a few dozen people boasting about eating meat daily were just talking big. What else could they eat besides hunting? Only large tribes like theirs, with over 2,000 people relying mainly on farming, understood how difficult it was to get a bite of meat. Eating one's fill and eating well were two completely different things. After breakfast, Xuan led Yang and Yu Fu's group to the nearby open ground. Several You Jiang men carried their tribe's unique tools, ready for a demonstration. The You Jiang farming tools mainly consisted of a 5-piece set: lay, see, rake, sickle, and hoe. The lay looked like a large cross, a long wooden stick sharpened at one end, with a crossbar tied near the point. To use it, one grasped the long handle with both hands, stepped on the crossbar and forcefully jammed the point into the ground, then pulled back to loosen the soil. It functioned similarly to a spade, but couldn't actually scoop earth. It was purely for loosening soil. The C was an upgraded version of the lay, basically the same but with an animal scapula, shoulder blade, attached to the bottom, making it look more functional, barely qualifying as a shovel. But this tool was precious. Suitable bones were hard to find, and it was held together entirely by ropes breaking down frequently. Repairing farm tools was practically a daily chore for the You Jiang. The rake was simpler, a wooden handle with tree branches serving as tines, used to level the ground after loosening the soil. The sickle was also common, used for harvesting, consisting of a wooden handle with a bone or stone blade tied to it. The hoe was even more primitive, a wooden stick with a pointed stone attached, resembling a pickaxe, painfully crude. Yet, the You Jiang relied on these ancient tools to sustain themselves. Xuan and Yu Fu supervised from the side while Yang led several tribesmen in a live demonstration. They lined up, grunting and groaning as they turned the soil with the lay, and sigh. After turning, they scattered seeds using millet husks as substitutes. Once scattered, they covered the seeds with soil using the rakes and finally, with great seriousness, watered them using earthenware pots. Yang explained alongside, saying their tribe had skilled individuals who could read the celestial signs and predict rainfall, usually sowing seeds just before rain to save the trouble of watering. He specifically emphasized that millet was drought-resistant. Too little water wasn't a problem, but too much could easily rot the roots, inevitably reducing the yield. Therefore, fields had to be chosen on high ground for good drainage. The key was absolutely no waterlogging. Nearby, Yuji watched, rubbing, his nose trying to stifle laughter, his shoulders shaking. He muttered inwardly, "My goodness, this efficiency! If the Han tribe farmed like this, the people would have probably resorted to gnawing tree bark long ago." Xuan glanced sideways at Yu Ji's suppressed laughter, feeling slightly annoyed. We're teaching you real skills here. Why aren't you learning? Seriously, snickering over there? He called him out directly. Yu Ji, what are your esteemed opinions on our farming methods? Ah? Oh. Caught red-handed, Yu Ji could only shrug. No esteemed opinions, just feel. Isn't this work a bit too slow? If a 100-pace square plot only feeds one person, then with over 2,000 people, how much land do you have to farm? Wouldn't you collapse from exhaustion? The implication was, I didn't want to say it, you forced me. Yu Fu shot his nephew a look, causing Yu Ji to quickly stick out his tongue. Jumong, standing nearby, was also exhausted, dropping his tool and plopping down on the ground, panting heavily. It was clear the work was indeed tiring and incredibly inefficient. Yesterday, you mentioned the Han tribe also grows grain, seemingly more than one type. Xuan didn't dwell on the young man's comment and turned to Yu Fu. So, how does your Han tribe farm? Oh, that. Yu Fu began listing their treasures. Our Han tribe has many types of grain. We have 3 main staples. One is wheat, similar to your millet, divided into barley and wheat. They grow to about the same height and mature in 4 to 5 months. Another is rice, divided into japonica and glutinous rice. The white porridge we just had was made from japonica rice. Glutinous. Rice is too sticky. Many people don't like it, so we grow less of it now. The last one is corn. That plant grows really tall, taller than a person. One stalk can produce 2 large ears, covered in plump kernels. It's a bit hard to eat, but it's quite fragrant when boiled and is one of our main staples. So. Many? Xuan was utterly astonished. Although he hadn't seen the things Yu Fu described, just hearing the quantity, listing 3 major categories and 5 specific types in such a short time, was simply unheard of. Moreover, he had tasted that rice porridge. Although not as fragrant as millet, it had a unique sweetness and was very filling. That large bowl from the morning still left his stomach feeling full. That's not all, Yu Fu continued, showing off. Peanuts, soybeans, cowpeas, sorghum. There are many more, but those aren't considered staples. We mainly eat rice and corn. We eat wheat too, it just matures slower and needs more care, so we grow relatively less of it. There's more. Yang echoed the exclamation, his jaw nearly hitting the floor. Had the Han tribe collected all the grain varieties to summon a dragon? They picked and chose what to grow, rotating what they ate, while his own tribe only had millet, barely counting the larger grained broomcorn millet, also known as yellow millet. There was simply no comparison. Then how does your Han tribe farm? With so many varieties, managing them must be incredibly troublesome, right? Xuan's curiosity was thoroughly piqued, wanting to get to the bottom of it. We're a bit different from you. Yu Fu considered his words. In the past, it was similar to yours. Everyone farmed together, harvested together, and the grain was distributed uniformly by the tribe. Xuan nodded alongside, thinking, just as I thought, isn't it the same? No matter how many types of grain you have, you still end up doing it this way. But, Yu Fu changed tack. This year our leader changed the rules. The land has been divided among individual households. Land is allocated based on merit and rank. Even those without any rank, adult men can receive 10 mu of land, which is even larger than your 100-pace square. Divided land? Given to individuals to farm themselves? These words struck like thunder, leaving the You Jiang people, including Chief Xuan, utterly dumbfounded. What kind of thinking was this? One person with so much land, how much work would that entail? Farm tools were already scarce. Shouldn't they concentrate their efforts on major tasks, working together? Can one person farm that much? Yang asked foolishly. Farming it is possible, but it depends on how much time is spent. If you miss the farming season, planting more is useless. The grain won't ripen before the weather turns cold. Xuan, being more practical, pointed out the key issue and pressed Yu Fu further. You allocate so much land per person. Do they do it all themselves? Surely they can't manage, right? They can manage. Yu Fu waved his hand. It's not what you think. Our leader allocates land to adults. When they marry and establish their own household, the man gets 10 mu of grain fields for growing grain. The woman gets 10 mu of auxiliary fields for growing vegetables and hemp. If they have children, they get more land, 5 mu per child, allocated as grain or auxiliary fields depending on gender. So basically each family has 20 to 30 mu of land, about the size of 3 of your 100 pace squares. Usually the couple works together, and older children lend a hand too. Xuan's mind raced, quickly identifying what he perceived as a loophole. Adults get land when they marry and set up house. Men and women each getting a large plot, adding up to so much land. 2 people farming it. Wouldn't they work themselves to death? Having children means more land, but young children can't farm, so the adults still have to do it. Doesn't that mean even more work? Then to save trouble, wouldn't people just stop having children? Wouldn't the Han tribe's population dwindle? What kind of bizarre rule was this? Shouldn't tribal leaders try to encourage people to have more children? With such nonsensical arrangements, wasn't the Han tribe leader perhaps a bit foolish? Cough. Perhaps his thinking was a bit unique. Xuan pointed out this unreasonableness, but Yu Fu immediately explained with a smile. You've misunderstood. That's not how it works. The land allocated to our Han tribe members belongs to them personally. The grain grown in their fields also belongs to them. Yu Fu dropped a bombshell. But they have to hand over a portion of the harvest to the tribe. Our leader calls this the grain tax. The rest you can eat however you want or trade it for other things. No one will interfere. The prerequisite is pay the grain tax first, otherwise you'll be punished. Grown grain belongs to oneself, but still have to give it to the tribe? Yang and the other You Jiang men were shocked again, their worldview shattered. Grain belongs to oneself, and yet it has to be given to the tribe? Aren't they part of the tribe? What was the meaning of this roundabout arrangement? Then how much do you have to hand over? Is the remainder enough for yourselves? Xuan was more concerned with practical matters. What does the tribe use this grain for? Are the tribe's people willing to hand it over? Also, having children gets more land, isn't that more tiring? Won't people really avoid having children just to be lazy? Hey, Yu Fu laughed. This grain tax has great uses, mainly for storage. The tribe collects the surplus grain that people don't eat and builds large granaries. If disaster strikes like a major drought or flood, and there's no harvest from the fields, the tribe opens the granaries to distribute grain and help everyone get through the hardship. Xuan and Yang nodded repeatedly, thinking this method indeed made sense. But on second thought, their You Jiang method of unified harvesting, distribution, and storage of the remainder didn't seem flawed either. As for how much to hand over, Yu Fu held up 4 fingers. Our Han tribe's current grain tax is 4/10. That means 4/10 of the grain you harvest must be given to the tribe. Hand over that much? The You Jiang people gasped collectively. That's too harsh. How much is left for oneself? Is it enough to eat? Enough, absolutely enough, Yu Fu declared confidently. Our rice and corn yields are very high. Most importantly, they mature quickly, 3 months per crop, at least 2 harvests a year. 1 mu of land is more than enough to feed 1 person. By your calculation, on that 100 pace square of land, if we plant rice or corn, we can feed 8 people. The successive shockwaves left the You Jiang people's barely steadied hearts utterly reeling, pummeled once again by the grain yields. Yu Fu casually mentioned, that stuff they had just eaten for breakfast had frighteningly high yields, matured in just 3 months. If one harvest wasn't enough, they could plant another? Double the pleasure from the same piece of land? This efficiency was practically cheating. However, after the shock wore off, Xuan's mind, still working rapidly, encountered new questions. Planting twice a year, doesn't the work double? Just turning the soil must be exhausting. Xuan frowned. Besides, if you plant the same plot continuously for 2 years, the soil fertility drops. The grain becomes weak and prone to disease. You guys are hitting it twice a year. How do you guarantee the harvest stays good and the land doesn't get sick? The You Jiang had been farming for quite some time. and naturally had their own methods and experience. They were well aware of the problem of soil depletion from continuous cropping, but they had no solution other than letting the land rest and rotating plots, which only treated the symptoms, not the root cause. Thinking about the Nian tribe they encountered before, who had to pack up and move every 2 or 3 years like nomads, they weren't even as stable as the You Jiang. Yes, our tribe has encountered this problem too. Or rather, anyone who farms can't avoid it. Yu Fu spoke eloquently. However, our leader knew about this from the very beginning. He has his own system. Our leader says the soil contains nutrients, and the grain relies on this stuff to grow. But these nutrients aren't infinite. Planting once depletes some. Constantly planting the same plot drains the nutrients. If the grain has nothing to eat, it naturally won't grow well, becomes weak and listless, and easily gets sick. It's like children. If they don't eat enough, how can they grow tall? Yu Fu's explanation was quite vivid. After hearing it, Xuan pondered the words nutrients, soil, used up, and nodded thoughtfully, clearly accepting the explanation. His estimation of the unseen Han tribe leader rose another notch. This was definitely an insightful person. To solve a problem, you first need to know its source. Find the root cause, then you can prescribe the right solution. This way of thinking was brilliant. Others probably wouldn't even think of this level, let alone find a solution. So, what clever tricks does your leader have to solve this problem? Xuan pressed. If the soil lacks nutrients, we just add some in. Yuji, standing nearby, blurted out the answer, looking as if, isn't it obvious? The You Jiang people seemed struck by lightning, collectively murmuring, oh, in sudden realization. Right, such a simple principle, how did we not think of it? But what exactly were these nutrients? Seeing Xuan, Yang, and the others staring intently at him, their eyes full of question marks, Yu Fu didn't wait for them to ask and proactively revealed the secret. Fertilizing. We collect all the human and animal manure and dump it into a big pit to pile up. Then we mix in some grain stalks, rotten leaves, burnt plant ash, and stuff like that. Mix it like mud and let it ferment on its own. You have to cover it up when it's hot. Once it's thoroughly decomposed, it becomes fertilizer. Before planting, we bury this fertilizer in the ground, burying it deep so the grain roots can absorb it. Oh, right. That's why you need to turn the soil deeply. Later, when the grain is about to ripen, we can add fertilizer again, called top dressing. At that time, we dilute the fertilizer with water and pour it directly onto the surface. Xuan listened, dumbfounded. This method was simply incredible. Manure, that stuff actually had such a use? What was the principle? Could it be, what was eaten became what was excreted was returned to the earth, and the earth grew food? Again, this cycle was too unbelievable. Is this a method passed down from your ancestors? Xuan took a long moment to find his voice again. How did your leader know? And does this method really work? Just piling up that manure, letting it sit in the heat for a while, then burying it in the ground, and the grain yield won't decrease, and it won't get sick? No, that alone isn't enough. Yu Fu shook his head. Fertilizing replenishes nutrients, yes, but constantly planting the same thing still has some impact. But our leader has another trick. Since continuous cropping isn't good, then we just don't plant continuously, right? He said with a smile. But you just said you plant twice a year, Yang reminded him quietly from the side. Right, twice a year, but I never said we had to plant the same thing, Yu Fu explained. We can plant a season of rice, then after harvesting, plant a season of corn or soybeans. We can also intercrop soybeans and corn, or plant soybeans after wheat, or corn after wheat. We can even plant one season of grain, followed by a season vegetables. Like this, rotating different crops, our leader calls it crop rotation. Using this crop rotation method, combined with fertilization, not only solves the problems of reduced yield and disease you mentioned, but sometimes it can even make the soil more fertile, and the grains and vegetables grow bigger and better. The You Jiang people were collectively petrified once again. Using manure as treasure was one thing, but now there was this idea of planting different grains in rotation to keep the land happy. This concept was too out there, completely beyond their scope of imagination. Of course, Xuan inwardly refused to admit the You Jiang were incapable. He felt it was not that they wouldn't, but that they couldn't. Their You Jiang only had millet, and broomcorn millet, yellow millet and foxtail millet, essentially siblings from the same family, just like the Han tribe's japonica and glutinous rice were both types of rice. With only this single lineage, what could they possibly use for crop rotation? They didn't even have the chance to experiment, so naturally, they couldn't discover the benefits of rotation. Therefore, it was understandable that they hadn't mastered this advanced technique. Yes, that must be it. Xuan, Yang, and the others were immersed in this entirely new farming theory, struggling to digest and absorb it. But soon, they both realized a more practical problem. Knowing crop rotation was amazing, but they didn't have any other seeds. Knowing fertilization was powerful, but that meant more work. Planting 2 seasons a year, plus composting and fertilizing, the workload more than doubled. How could they possibly manage? You Fu, Xuan brought the topic back to the beginning. You still haven't said with 2 people doing so much work, how do you actually manage it? Oh, that. You Fu remembered. Mainly the tools we use in the Han tribe are different from yours. The materials are different, the shape is different, they save effort and are faster. Plus, we have helpers to assist with the work. He nudged Yuji with his chin. Yuji, take out that precious shovel of yours and open their eyes. At the mention of Yuji, the expressions of the You Jiang men darkened slightly. Just moments ago, while Yang and the others were exhausting themselves demonstrating soil turning, this kid was smirking on the side, even saying things like, if the Han tribe farmed like this, they'd starve to death. It was infuriating. Yuji sensed the unfriendly glares, gave an awkward laugh, and deftly pulled the gleaming entrenching tool from his lower back, handing it to Yu Fu. Yu Fu took the shovel and shoved it right in front of Xuan and Yang. Take a look. How does this thing compare to your lay and si? Yang took the shovel. He remembered it. He had seen Yuji using it to chop firewood that morning. It looked like a stone axe with a handle, capable of chopping and cutting. What did it have to do with the soil-turning lay and si? But prompted by Yu Fu, he compared the entrenching tool with the lay and si. Hey, they did look somewhat similar. Simply put, weren't the lay and si the most primitive forms of shovels? This entrenching tool was just a lay, with a complete, much sturdier blade. Yong turned the shovel over and over, then decided to try it himself, mimicking how he had used the lay and si earlier to dig into the ground. Whoa, it worked really well. One scoop dug deep and fast, countless times better than the cumbersome wooden lay and si. The handle was just a bit short, requiring him to bend over. But since the Han tribe carried this thing around, and it could both cut and dig, it clearly wasn't a dedicated farming tool, but a multi-functional one, useful for work and self-defense. Yuji took another one from an attendant nearby and handed it to Xuan. Xuan tried it too. It was indeed vastly superior to their own tools. He tapped the metallic gleam of the shovel blade with his finger, producing a crisp clang-clang. He then took Yong's shovel and compared them, finding the 2 shovels were identical, as if cast from the same mold. This was simply unbelievable. However, Xuan reconsidered. Even if this tool was better, wasn't it still digging earth 1 scoop at a time? Besides being sturdier and more durable, wasn't it essentially the same as the lay and si? Could this really increase the speed of turning soil? He didn't believe it. This is just a small tool we carry for convenience, for digging pits or chopping firewood, not the big equipment specifically for turning soil. Yu Fu saw his doubt and dropped another bombshell. What we Han tribe use for turning soil is a very large tool called a plow. It doesn't poke the ground bit by bit like the lay and si, but it's pulled along. Li, what's that? How is it pulled? Xuan and Yang asked in unison, faces full of confusion. How can I explain it to you? Yu Fu scratched his head, then his eyes lit up. Hey, Got it. Okay. Does anyone have a rope? Bring one over. Xuan nodded, and Yang immediately ran to fetch one. Soon he returned with a thick rope woven from tree bark fibers. Yu Fu took the rope and tied it directly where the iron shovel head connected to the wooden handle, treating it as a rudimentary plow. He first inserted the shovel head sideways and diagonally into the soil, so the handle pointed backward and upward at roughly a 45-degree angle. Then he threw the long rope forward and started directing Xuan and Yang. Chief Xuan, you get behind, hold this handle, press down, and follow Yang. Remember, don't let the shovel leave the ground, just maintain this angle, keep it moving forward. He then shouted to Yang. Yang, you get in front and pull the rope. Pull hard forward, walk in a straight line. Xuan and Yang were bewildered by the instructions. A shovel, a rope, what trick could they perform? But seeing Yu Fu's serious expression, they complied doubtfully. Xuan bent over behind, holding the handle. At first he felt nothing special. But when Yang in front exerted force and pulled the rope, a miracle happened. The shovel, pulled by the rope, shot forward violently. If Xuan hadn't been pressing down hard behind, it probably would have flown right out of the ground. Under Xuan's control, the iron blade remained sideways and angled, forcibly dragged through the soil at high speed. Behind it, a deep, straight furrow immediately appeared. Although the soil-turning effect wasn't great, since the blade was vertical, the speed, Xuan only managed to run a few steps before he was completely stunned. Just by adding a rope, this efficiency, this speed, it was too fast. Stop quickly, Xuan shouted excitedly. Yang, replace this thing with our lay, quick. Yang looked back and was also astonished by the deep plow mark behind him. Understanding the chief's intention, he quickly untied the rope from the entrenching tool and tied it to a wooden lay in the same manner. The two got into position again. This time, the lay's handle was longer, allowing Xuan to stand straighter while holding it, feeling much more comfortable. But Yang, pulling the rope in front, grimaced. The conical wooden point met huge resistance in the soil, making it much harder to pull than before, and the speed was significantly slower. But, even if it was slower, it was still countless times faster than poking the ground bit by bit. Xuan, holding the lay behind, and the surrounding You Jiang onlookers were so shocked their jaws nearly dropped. Xuan, however, suddenly burst into laughter and quickly called out to Yang in front. Yang! Turn around, pull backward, look quickly. Look at the ground behind. Yang did as told, turned around, wrapped the rope around his waist, faced backward, and began pulling. Now he witnessed the magical scene firsthand. Pulled by him, the crude wooden lay, its point dug deep into the soil, was led forward by the rope as if running. The soil in front was forcibly turned over, loose earth sliding off both sides of the wooden point, leaving a clear furrow behind. This soil-turning efficiency, compared to their previous ant gnawing on a bone method with the lay and sigh, was like a dimensional downgrade. But it was just adding a rope. How could there be such a heaven and earth difference? Yu Fu! Xuan's eyes gleamed as if seeing a priceless treasure, staring intently at Yu Fu. Is the Han tribe's plow like this? Something like that, Yu Fu gestured. But our Han tribe's plow is much larger and more intricate than this. The front part is a plowshare made of forged steel, the same material as this entrenching tool. The back has a curved handle. Our leader calls it a curved shaft plow, Kuyuan lei. It's better for exerting force than your straight handle. Plows faster and turns the soil deeper. The most crucial thing is... Yu Fu paused, building suspense. What's the most crucial thing? Xuan asked eagerly, Yang also pricking up his ears. Beside him, does this thing require two people? One pulling in front, one guiding behind? Yu Fu simply smiled faintly and unhurriedly took a glittering gold coin from his waist pouch. He placed the coin in his palm, displaying the side with the engraved pattern to Xuan and Yang. On it, clearly depicted, was a sturdy ox pulling a strange farming tool through a field. Yu Fu pointed at the pattern and stated, word by word, we use oxen to pull it.